today. We have a special guest speaker today, Michael, who's from Woodland Hall, who's going to talk about Senior Care 101 and what that means. He will explain to you. But Rachel and I, as you know, are real estate agents that sponsor these each month. And we have other sponsors, like Glen is one of our sponsors, and help keep us going and able to do this every month. Just like Cody's is one of our sponsors also. We want to make sure your phones are off before we start, so that we don't have any interruptions.
And while you're turning off your phones, I would also love to thank some of our other educational sponsors, such as Lamar Nursery. I actually told Erin, whose father owns Lamar, I said, you know, everybody was so excited at Cody's last month to take home the roses. She goes, oh yeah? And she gave me like a dozen more. So we'll be sending a bunch of roses home with you today. They're in the back. But Lamar is very generous, as well as Cody's Cafe. We have Paragon Mortgage, Center for Successful Aging, and we have their newspapers in the back if you would like to grab them. Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, and Curated Transitions. So all of the brochures and information are on that back table if you'd like to grab it on the way out. Without further ado, Michael, we are excited to have you here.
Thank you. Of course, my computer shut down, so 1 second. Here we go. Can everybody see that okay? Yes. And can you hear me okay? I can take it up a notch if I need to. We'll see if I can keep that going for a while. So today, as you can see, we're going to discuss Senior Living 101. The idea behind that is some blanket terminology and understanding of care levels and these sorts of things that are helpful to navigate the world of senior living. The first thing that I wanted to do was in front of you is actually a bingo card. And just like starting a new subject in school, any subject we start, the first thing we learn is we learn the vocabulary. The only way that you can talk about a subject is by having words to describe and converse in that topic. So we're going to settle some terminology and some acronyms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read definitions, and with your candies that are on your table, you can mark your space off with the term. So I'll say the definition and you mark off the term. You can shout out the term too. This is a learning experience for everyone. So not everyone in the room might know what that term is, and it'd be helpful if you shout it out. The first one I will say is activities of daily living. Mark that off. Oh yeah. Yeah, who knows, who got that one? ADL? Great, awesome. So that's ADL. I should say how we're going to win today, actually. I didn't go over that because it's important. The first person to get 4 in a row, Holly, our sales manager at Glen, is going to hand you a $10 Amazon gift card. The second person to win will be somebody who gets the X. That's where it crosses both ways. That'll be a second $10 gift card. And then whoever gets around the border, that's every space around the border, not just the corners, will get the third $10 gift card. We will have people winning simultaneously, so the first person to throw their hand up and say bingo is the winner. I don't want anyone getting in a fight today. Okay, let's try an adult daycare center that is typically non-residential facility and supports the health, nutritional, social, and daily living needs of adults in professionally staffed group setting. What is that?
Adult day services.
Adult day services. Mark that off. A program that gives special care to people who are near the end of life and have stopped treatment to cure or control their disease. I know I hear both. This one is hospice care. They are very similar. Great opportunity to share. So I'll do palliative care next. So go ahead and mark palliative care. That's an interdisciplinary medical. Oh, we got a bingo over there. So while you're doing that, I will say that's the first 4 too. Palliative care is an interdisciplinary medical caregiving approach aimed at optimizing quality of life and mitigating suffering among people with serious, complex, and sometimes terminal diseases. So that's not, palliative care is about comfort, but not necessarily about end of life. And hospice is specifically for end of life circumstances, but we have our bingo over there for after 4 terms got read. It took about 8 when we did this earlier this morning. So here we go.
Now we need the X, everybody.
Skilled nursing facilities.
So we have an X.
Assisted living.
We're waiting for the X now. So bingo should be the X. Do you have an X?
Oh, SNF.
Like both the X.
Like both. Now we're looking for this. We're all the way around for the next winner. Yep. So SNF. Yeah, SNF. But most people in the industry just say SNF for skilled nursing facility. Okay. This is the name of the federal health insurance for anyone ages 65 and older, or some people under 65 with certain disabilities.
Medicare.
Yep, that's right. All right, next is a type of long-term care for seniors with memory loss or other cognitive impairments.
Memory care.
Memory care.
Got that one.
What is it? So, continuing care retirement community.
Yep. RCFB.
Continuing care retirement community. That's CCRC. That's the acronym for Continuing Care Retirement Communities. We have the X. So we're looking for an X across at this time. Yep. It's not another just 4. Yep. You can fill in your free space, absolutely. CCRC is Continuing Care Retirement Communities. The oldest senior living facility in Santa Barbara, founded in 1957 by the Wood family. Yeah.
Do you have an X?
No, she doesn't.
Okay. A senior care community that is designed for adults that need little to no assistance. It's usually the entry level of those CCRCs. Independent living. Yeah, we should be running out of squares. Still looking for the X or around the world.
Not that, okay.
Free space. Yeah, we're looking for the X. Residential care facility for the elderly. RCFE, that's right.
Which one is that?
RCF, residential care facility for the elderly,
I'm running out of
which
things
is
to
basically
say.
assisted living.
Planned or emergency temporary care provided to caregivers of a child or an adult.
Assisted living.
Respite. We got an X over here.
Getting close. Yeah, we need both the X.
Bingo over here. Are we doing the X?
Oh, we got a bingo over
An
there.
X?
Let's see.
Okay, we have an X over here.
All right.
Very nice.
So now we need all around the edge.
This next one is the coverage that provides nursing care home, long-term health care, and personal adult daycare for individuals 65 or older. It's the coverage that provides that. Long-term care insurance. Do we have any around, all the way around? Oh boy. Okay, this next thing is also known as an active adult community. It's a residential neighborhood where most of the residents have a minimum age requirement. 55 plus. And we got the bingo around the world. There we go. Good job. Yeah, there was only one left, so everybody else was about to win. Oh, the last one was assisted living. Okay. Well, I hope somebody heard a term they hadn't heard before, and just to go over a little bit more about what we're going to talk through today. If I can get the presentation to work. I really love when people just ask questions. I don't necessarily want to talk for an hour straight. So please jump in with any comments or questions or points of clarification. So we're going to go over understanding aging services. What are these things? And then what each care level means and what kind of programs they offer. And then what all of that looks like in our local landscape in Santa Barbara and Goleta. And then finally, and during, we'll have time for as much Q&A as you need. And then when we run out of time as a group, I'll stick around and hear any questions you might have. Well, actually, what does anybody? I imagine that this group understands the importance of understanding senior care, but why do you think it's important to know the terminology and what is important about it? Anybody want to jump in? We're gonna have a quiet group. Yeah, that's exactly the last one on my bullet points. So the last one here is for insurance purposes or to make informed decisions for financial reasons. An informed person is going to make better choices, ask better questions, and end up getting better care. Also, the top two reasons are most people are going to navigate it themselves or help somebody else navigate it. We all know somebody who's going to go through the end of life process by aging into it, and hopefully most of us will also age into that era of our life. So yeah, some of you here might be caregivers, and some of you might be looking for this yourselves. So that's why we need to know how it all works. The other reason that I like to point out is that in California, in 2030, 10.8 million Californians will be over 65. That's 1 in 4 Californians will be over the retirement age. So if we're not thinking about it as a broader community, then we're not going to be ready for that reality. I love that I got to meet somebody who is working on Santa Barbara's master plan for aging. There is talk about this. We're trying to prepare for it, but it's going to be a massive project. That's the next Florida, is what we're looking at over here on this side. So what are aging services? What is elder care? What is senior care? What is elderly care? The short answer is they're all the same thing, and this relatively new industry has gone through a million different names based on how this group of people like to be called, or what they like to be referred to as. I think the consensus is that senior is a nice word. Elderly is kind of the one maybe we're shying away from. Aging services is another nice thing to say. They're blanket terms for serving the needs of older adults, and it encompasses assisted living, adult daycare, long-term care, nursing homes, hospice care, and more and more. And it really is talking about the social needs and the physical needs and cognitive needs of these people and how we're caring for them. And that looks really, really different in the United States as it does from in Japan, or even in California as it does from the Midwest. Because culturally, there are different expectations of how people help the aging population, and it's a really, really new industry. In 1900, the average age of a person reached 47. And in 1950, it went up 20 years to about 67. So in 1950, all of a sudden we had old people, to put it plainly. All of a sudden there were people who were getting old, and we didn't know how to take care of all of them. So really in the 50s is when we saw the boom. Glen started in 1957 out of the need for it. We saw this boom of people getting older and needing help. And so we're still trying to figure out what that looks like, and it changes with every generation. And the names change. And so it's a tricky thing to navigate. So we'll go through some of the care levels in typical senior care facilities, or what we like to say is communities. The first one is independent living, and you'll see two types of independent livings. There are the 55 plus communities that we already talked about on the board. Those are just intentional spaces in the greater community with a minimum age requirement. Typically don't really have any services. There might be like community events, but it's not gonna be nursing or care in the home. You're still gonna get that from outside agencies. And then the other type of independent living is usually gonna be attached to a greater community. It's usually a building that is independent living and assisted living, or a giant community that is independent, assisted, skilled nursing, and memory care. It runs the spectrum of aging. And then that first level that people enter is independent living. And then the next level is assisted living. And this is the one that I have spent most of my career in this world on and in. It's the one near and dear to me. It's the one that is the most misunderstood, I think. And it's because of its relationship, in my opinion, to independent living. Because both of those terms are what we call autological. The term itself describes what it is. Independent living is for people who are independent. And assisted living is living with some assistance or needing a little bit of assistance living, but because they're paired next to each other, it implies accidentally that people moving into assisted living are no longer independent. And so that's a big sticking point for people thinking about assisted living, is it implies that your independence is being ripped away. And in American culture, that's where people stop. They're like, no, you're not taking away my independence. That's a right. I'm gonna have that independence forever. But our philosophy in assisted living is that assisted living is supposed to assist you in being as independent as you can possibly be. We take away the hard things in your life so that you can continue to live out the most independent life you can. Whereas if you're at home and you can't put your pants on anymore, then as a result you can't go outside and you can't go do this or you can't do that. So you actually lose a lot more independence by not letting somebody do that one thing for you. We're not taking away all your independence, we're giving it back to you by taking away that one thing you can't do. That's the idea of assisted living. And as an aside, I always think it's funny that we're so intense about that independence notion, because I don't really think we're ever fully independent, but that's the sticking point. Babies are not independent. I'm not independent with my 2 teenagers and a toddler at home. We're never independent in our medical decisions. None of us do our own medical procedures. We're always relying on other people to help us in the things we can't do for ourselves. So it shouldn't be any different when we head to assisted living. It's just another aspect of being alive and needing help that you just can't do yourself. So trying to take away the taboo from that experience for people is really something I'm passionate about, getting that idea out to everyone. Stop me if you have any questions. I'll just keep going.
What does the abbreviation RC?
Oh, sorry, I skipped right over that, didn't I? RCFE is Residential Care Facilities for the Elderly. And that's their technical term in California. It's regulated by the Department of Social Services, so we're not regulated by the Department of Public Health. We're not technically a healthcare facility as a result of that. We're technically a social model. Social Services oversees RCFEs. All assisted livings and memory cares are overseen by the Department of Social Services. And that's another important thing to emphasize, because people think they're moving into a healthcare facility and they're not. They're moving into a place that's supposed to be based on a social model that's good for the whole person. And so they're the people that I answer to, especially during COVID. And then the last, if we're looking at it hierarchically, but I don't like to do that, the lowest level in a continuing care retirement community is skilled nursing, or there's standalone skilled nursing. They don't exist. Only a couple of them exist in Santa Barbara, actually. They're usually attached to those bigger communities. And that's for people who have a specific skilled need. Again, the term describes itself. you need someone who is a licensed nurse to care for something that you can't do anymore. And that's why it becomes expensive and they're crowded. It's because they're staffed with nurses 24/7 because it's some kind of need that needs to be overseen by a licensed nurse, not just a caregiver. They're also used in instances of short-term rehabilitation. You are in the hospital after a broken leg, and the hospital's not going to get you back walking on your feet, but you can't go straight home. And so a skilled nursing usually has a wing or a designated amount of beds that take care of people short-term on Medicare while they get better. And then, as I was saying, skilled nursing is the level of care in California where Medicare and Medi-Cal can come into play. Independent and assisted living in Santa Barbara right now do not have anything to do with Medicare and Medi-Cal. One, because they're not healthcare facilities, and two, because we haven't gotten ourselves involved in the programs that have tried to bridge those two worlds. It's coming, and we're working on it, but not in Santa Barbara yet. And then the last one that you see in most facilities or communities is memory care. And memory cares, when they're by themselves, are also RCFEs. They just have to be secured, and they have to have designated programs for people who are living with dementia, Alzheimer's, or other cognitive-related illnesses. And they're often smaller communities, because as you might imagine, that's easier. It's an easier situation to manage in small groups. The last one that is not on here is also assisted living, but I left it off, and someone pointed it out the last time I gave all this out. And that is what is called board and care communities, or sometimes referred to as 6-bed communities. They're called 6-bed because RCFE regulations have certain requirements for any facility that is higher than 6 beds. 7 beds or more, suddenly all kinds of new things come into play about your social programming and nursing and these sorts of things. So people buy up houses and they retrofit them to be 6-bed facilities or board and care facilities. You might have a friend that you know who, after the hospital, went to one of those for a while because people use it for respite a lot. And then there's also people who will live there long term. The benefit is that they're not often as cost prohibitive for people, and sometimes they will do a little bit more than what a normal assisted living might do. Because there's a smaller amount of people, they might be able to get away with higher acuity in terms of their medical condition. The big downside, however, is that they cannot support the kind of programming that would allow real intensive social interaction and activities and the kinds of things you would get at a larger community. So those are the levels of care. And then the big one is the CCRC, or the Continuing Care Retirement Community. Those are traditionally defined as communities with independent living, assisted living, and skilled nursing, all on one physical place. The people who go live at these places pay the premium rate for an entrance fee, and the attraction there is kind of two things. One, if you're just yourself, you know you're going to be in that place for the rest of your life. They're going to take care of you no matter how you age. The other big benefit of that type of community is for spouses, because one person, when you're moving into independent, your doctor may have just told you that you have early signs of Alzheimer's, and you know you're probably going to end up in a memory care, but your husband or wife is not going to go to the memory care with you, and instead of getting separated by miles or cities, you know that you're going to be in the same community as you age through that process. So that's the attraction to those, but they're incredibly cost restrictive. They're really, really, really expensive. Yes, and they all have wait lists in California. That's the other downside. And they're changing. So there's also a big move in California of closing down skilled nursing facilities. They're not popular anymore. Raise your hand if you want to live in a skilled nursing facility. Exactly, that's why they're closing. Nobody wants to live in them, and so assisted livings have kind of pushed themselves in ways that they hadn't before to try and accommodate people who would live in a skilled nursing facility. And so they're starting to lose business, they're reorienting to take care of people who need respite or rehabilitation a little bit more. Any questions so far about those care levels?
Yeah, what is respite again?
Respite is, most communities will have respite off and on, as an availability, like if you, well, we'll just say Holly and I, live in an apartment together, and Holly is my caregiver, but she's also my friend who just lives there to take care of me, right? And she wants to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. She would look for respite care at an assisted living or skilled nursing and say, I need you to take care of Michael while I go on vacation and take care of myself. So some communities offer respite care. It's usually based on availability, because as soon as you have one room left, you're gonna sell it to somebody who's gonna live there long term, not somebody who's going to come in short term. So respite really ebbs and flows in communities based on how many rooms they have available overall. So respite is like sorely needed more of.
Does insurance cover it, or is it all covered?
Now, unfortunately, insurance does not cover respite. Insurance doesn't cover anything other than skilled nursing. It's really, really important. We get phone call after phone call of people saying, what does Medi-Cal do for my apartment at Glen? And the answer is nothing, because we're not a healthcare facility. We can't bill insurance for non-healthcare practices. Any other questions about those care levels? Okay, I just wanted to say that there's also a lot of care at home. I'm not gonna really delve into that today, but there's adult day services where some people will live with their caregiver, and the caregiver works full-time, so they drop them off at an adult daycare center, but then they still do the night care, and that can work for a certain amount of time. There's the Friendship Center in Montecito. There used to be one in Goleta, and I think because of COVID, it closed down. It was by the library, I believe. And so those are like invaluable spaces for caregivers to get their breaks and be able to continue working. There's also something called home health, and that's physical therapists and occupational therapists and nurses and caregivers coming into your house after you've had a hospital stay or you need a little help at home, and they do a little bit of work for you. Some of that can be covered by insurance too. And then the last one is hospice. I didn't say this before, but I always like to point out to people that hospice is available to you wherever you are. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't die where you are. Hospice comes in at the end of life and takes care of people, and they make sure that people are comfortable in whatever setting they're currently in. And it's a wonderful thing that they do. And Medicare covers all of that too. People don't realize that, but hospice is free to anybody on Medicare. And so,
If you have money and you go to Serenity House, you have to pay that.
yeah, but Serenity House is an extension of hospice services. So hospice services that come into your home that's free. Yeah. Serenity House is like a facility that VNA runs on top of what they would normally do. It's considered, an added service.
And Michael, we do have pamphlets from VNA Health
Cool.
at Serenity House and Home Health and Hospice back here.
Okay, so all those terms we just talked about, where do those exist in Santa Barbara and Goleta? This isn't an exhaustive list of all the places. I just want to give you an idea, say the names you've heard before. The CCRCs, the continuing care retirement communities, there's only 3 left that exist in the traditional model, which is independent, assisted living, memory care, and skilled nursing. And they are the San Racan, Valverde, and Casa Dorinda. And if you know anything about those 3 places, they're really, 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 really expensive. And they all have really, really long waiting lists. So, that's what they are. Those are the 3. And And then the bigger RCFEs or assisted livings and memory cares are the ones you hear about, like Mariposa, just over the freeway, Heritage House, and Mariposa, and there's Gran Vida in Carpinteria. They're popping up everywhere because this is kind of the new model that is a little more sustainable and a little less cost restrictive, because it usually has some independent apartments so people feel like they can get in there before things get too difficult. And then they offer assisted living services and often have memory cares as well. Okay, so where does Wood Glen fit into all of that? We were Santa Barbara's first and we were Santa Barbara's last standalone nonprofit senior living community. We operate as an assisted living and an independent living, but because we're on the smaller side or medium size, we don't like segregate those two levels of care. You move in an independent and you stay in your apartment as you become somebody who needs assisted living. There's not a transition that happens there. And so for couples, that's great too, because you might move in together and one of you needs assisted living and the other one doesn't. You just stay in the same apartment.
That's nice.
And we were established in 1957 by the Wood family. You would know them because of Wood Clison's Foundation. They give a lot of their money to the Santa Barbara community. And they established us when they saw a need for this kind of community in Santa Barbara. And when they built it, they incorporated it as a nonprofit and handed it off to a board of directors. So it's always been a nonprofit. It's always operated on an affordable model. And I say affordable, but I really mean Santa Barbara affordable. It's not cheap, but it's not as expensive as these other places. We try and stay we're a little bit over half of what the bigger places cost. Yeah, so it really is more accessible.
Where do those people go when they need skilled nursing or memory care?
I get on the phone with skilled nursings and find them a place. I can't say in the contract that we guarantee a spot, but we're the kind of place that's going to take care of people when they need something else. When they need a memory care, we're going to find them a good memory care, and we'll find them a good skilled nursing. Hopefully. How long is our waiting list? It depends on the size of the room that you need. But we do have rooms available today, and we have a lot of turnover because of the world that it is, and because of the industry that it is. Not to be morbid about it, but so wait lists don't stay that long because it's not huge and it's not expensive. So we're able to accommodate people who need it.
Does Medicare or Medicaid cover the cost of this?
We can't. No, unfortunately, it does not. Yeah.
So I was curious if there's any challenges to moving to a larger room or smaller as you change your mind. That I know people that get in and they accept whatever is available, and because it's not what they prefer, and then they're in there, and so how does that work?
And they get like stuck in the room that they didn't want, and they really want something different.
Usually not, no. They end up being able to move to whatever they prefer.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, we also do that. We have internal waiting lists for rooms, and we have external waiting lists for rooms. And we always try to give preference to the internal,
Sure.
but if we have somebody who's like desperately needs a room, and that's the only room available, then we'll get somebody safe from outside of the community before we move our own people around in the building.
Okay.
Just
Where are you located, and what is the size range of the rooms you have? Are they all studios, or do you have one bedroom units?
yeah, our facility, our community, is located on the corner of Alomar and Foothill. So that's where San Roque and Mission Canyon neighborhoods kind of meet on the bottom of the hill. If you're almost when Alomar ends. And our sizes are, we have a standard studio, and then we have a deluxe studio, which is slightly larger, they're both one-room apartments, and then we have a suite, which is a one-bedroom apartment.
How many square feet?
How many square feet are they, Holly?
The one bedroom's about 500 and the
What's that? Oh, the one bedroom's about 500 square feet, and it has 2 bathrooms. basically conjoin we conjoin standard studios to make 1 bedrooms. So it's just 2 apartments with a door in the middle, and so couples love it because they each get their own bathroom, which is great, which is really necessary at that point in your life.
And how much is a 1 bedroom?
1 bedrooms are set, well, so the smallest is 4410, and that's room and board, and access to all of our activities and 24-hour care if you need it, and then any additional services are all on an a la carte kind of menu. We try and be really transparent about what we charge instead of these like service levels that are really vague and hard to figure out. It's just like, if you need help getting dressed, here's the monthly charge for it. So it starts at $44.10. The deluxe is $58, and then the suite is $71.
Does that include meals?
Yeah.
All the meals and the housekeeping and linen service and lots
I
of
tell
activities.
people I challenge them to find an apartment in Santa Barbara for that price with food included. Yeah.
Do you
So
have kitchens in it?
we don't. We have shared kitchenettes in the hallways, so with refrigerators but we do not have kitchens in our rooms.
So like at breakfast, lunch and dinner, you go to a restaurant on the premises?
Yeah, it's the dining room, or you can take a tray service in your room. If
And the food is delicious.
the food is delicious. Yeah, and breakfast tends to be a little bit more casual, and people can get what they want. It's more short order type of service. And then lunch and dinner are set menus with an always available menu in case you don't like what's being served that day. What other questions? Yes?
Okay, so, is this included that you would have a bus to say go shopping at Costco, or to, that you could?
Transportation services,
That you could
yeah.
pay for your own thing that you wanna ride to? Do you have those options?
Yeah, it's both. We have weekly shopping trips that take groups of people to 1 week at CVS or Trader Joe's or the CVS further down the street that some people prefer. It gets very complicated. But there's different places that people like to be taken to, so we'll do that in group trips. We have 2 days a week where our driver will do free medical drives that are included in just being there. If you can get your medical appointments on those 2 days, then your drives are included. And then we'll do paid drives on top of that, or we'll help you get in touch with Easy Lyft or an Uber or a taxi cab. There's lots of options to get where you need to go. And then we also have about a good amount of one side of our parking lot there is cars of residents. So a number of our residents still drive. Yeah. Yep.
How do you schedule a tour?
How do you schedule a tour with this woman right here? This is Holly Walling. She's our sales and marketing manager at Glen, and she can schedule a tour with you today if you wanted to. But really, any other questions about senior care in general too? I'm not here just to sell apartments at Wood Glen. I have a strong passion to educate everyone, not just seniors. I want to educate everybody about senior care because not enough people know it, and then they're confronted with it, and it's a mess to navigate. So, any questions?
I just
We have
had
two
an
back there.
idea.
Yeah.
Is there a yearly rent increase, or are you grandfathered in? How does that work?
There's a yearly rent increase.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's at all facilities, all communities have about 3 to 5. Right now, sometimes 7 or 9, depending, because it's inflation. It's to catch up. Ours this year was 5%. We've seen 3. We've seen lower, and sometimes you have to do higher. But we also are giving increases to all the staff every year, and costs of everything go up. There was another question?
Yeah, what was the difference between like a Samarkand and then the next group, which is Maravilla? What was that?
The difference
mean?
is that the Samarkand has independent living, assisted living, memory care and skilled nursing all on one, in one space.
Whereas Maravilla and those places, they
Those
don't have that?
They often have independent assisted living and memory care. They're not gonna have a skilled nursing. Some of them don't have memory care, some of them don't have independent living. They're a little bit more, they're just customizable options. The continuing care big ones will always have all levels of care in one place. Yes?
Michael, I just want people to understand San Marcan, Casa Dorinda, and Valverde, because people don't understand it. I've had friends on the waiting list, and a cottage will come up, or a room will come up, and they go, no, I'm not ready. No, I'm not ready. And so they're on the list still, but they just moved down one. Then one of them falls. And now he can no longer walk. He cannot go to Valverde anymore, and he wants to. But since he's in a wheelchair, it's continuing care. They want you to be able to walk in and then stay there for the rest of your life, not go in midstream. And so now his choices have gone very little, where he really wants to go to Valverde, but that's no longer a choice. So if you're thinking about Valverde and you're on the list, before something happens, make that decision, because there's no decision now for them.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And to expand on that, that happens at Glen too, even though we're not the big place for the continuing care. We'll have people come in and they'll tour and they'll say, gee, I really like this place, and so does the family that's touring with them. And we'll say, okay, we'll get you down for this room. And then we talk to them a week later and they're like, you know, I'm really still doing pretty good in my home, and I'm gonna wait. The reason that they toured 2 weeks before is because they had their first fall, or because something happened, and it's like, wait, maybe we should think about that move. And then they're like, well, actually I'm doing okay after that. And then 4 weeks later, or 4 months later, they fall again, and this time they break their hip. And now they're in the hospital and they're going to skilled nursing for rehab, and we have to say, I'm sorry, we have to reevaluate. And we're not sure if you're gonna be able to come to Glen, because we might not be able to manage the care that you now need. So we lovingly like to call these two groups of people the planners and the panickers. There are some people who plan for their circumstances and they get in before things get hard and they're able to manage the situation. And then there are the panickers who the circumstances that befall them now dictate where they end up. They no longer get to dictate where they go and how they live the end of their life and that part of the aging process. They just have to go wherever will take them. Because then you're like up against new waiting lists and new levels of care, and suddenly your family's scrambling to help you get in anywhere, and you just take what you can get. And it's just a harder situation to be in than to go, okay, this is the time when I need to start thinking about this, and I'm gonna get in at the place I wanna be.
So for clarification, do I understand that you can't come to Glen if you're in a wheelchair?
No.
But once you're, you
No,
can?
I said San Marcan, Valverde, or Casa Dorinda. Those are the three that are the continuing care. You have to walk in and they will take care of you for the rest of your life, but it's like $500,000.
Yeah, right.
You pay a big fee to be there. Glen Hall, they'll assess you, like he says, they'll assess you. If they can take care of you, they will. And
Yeah.
if they have a space.
So you could come in a wheelchair?
Well,
depending on the assessment?
It really, really depends.
Okay.
The wheelchair has many different uses today.
Yes.
There are people who like to get down the hallway in a wheelchair, but in their room they can what we like to call furniture walk, and they like to do, but for long distances their legs just won't do it anymore, and so they use the wheelchair in that circumstance. A rule of thumb for Glen and other assisted livings like us is that you have to have what we call some level of functional mobility left, some ability to transfer in and out of a chair and help at that level. Size can dictate that. Sometimes we can help. I hate to say it, but like a little 85-pound-year-old woman who really is in a wheelchair, but if it's a 250-pound giant man, we're not gonna be able to do it. So, that's the reality of the situation. We only can do what we can with the caregivers that we have, and so there's a lot of like customizing that happens for each individual that comes in. So I hate throwing blankets out, like we don't take people in wheelchairs, or we don't take people who need this. It just depends on who you are and how often you need it, and like and how you're gonna interact with that need. And level of cognition really plays into that as well. Yes.
Can you have overnight family visitors
Oh.
or out-of-town people staying?
At Wood Glen, yes.
Okay.
Sometimes depends on the room. Some residents keep their room in a state where it probably shouldn't have anyone. But most people like to. I think our rule currently is that the guests can't stay for more than 3 nights a month, because we just don't want people to abuse that invitation. And so every community varies. Samarkand, which is where I spent just under 8 years before I was at Wood Glen, Samarkand has guest rooms, and those cost money a night, but it's cheaper than a hotel. So friends coming into town will stay at the Samarkand at a great rate. We don't have that kind of space at Wood Glen, so we allow our families to stay in the room with them. Other questions about Wood Glen or about senior care in general? And if you don't want to shout out your question, I'll stick around too.
You're good? All right, well, thank you, Michael. It's been wonderful.
Oh, I'll say one more thing though. This information is in front of you in the form of my card, and I already said this. I'm genuinely interested in helping people navigate this world. You don't need to just call me because you want to move into Wood Glen. If you are confused about another facility in Santa Barbara and what they're telling you about what you need or what you need to do, or you have a friend who needs to get into skilled nursing and you don't know how to navigate it, just call me. I might be able to help you. That's what I want to do.
A question about entrance fees.
Yeah.
At various places. The older you are, the less incentive there is to put out $50,000 or $100,000 when you're close to 90 or something like that. Is there any how do you answer that question?
It doesn't, thank you, and Holly asked me to talk about this, and then I totally forgot. There's no sliding scale based on age for entrance fee, not at any of the communities in Santa Barbara that I'm aware of. Casa Dorinda's is just flat, and last I checked, it was just $1 million. You pay $1 million and you're into Casa Dorinda. And Samarkand's is based on the apartment that you want, and that ranges from like $200,000 all the way up to almost $1 million. So they all change based on that, but they do not change based on age. Wood Glen, and then the smaller ones like Marvia and others, they have sizable community fees, maybe $10,000 to $15,000 to move in. Wood Glen, we just charge you the first month rent on top. So if you're moving in to an apartment, it's $4,400 to move in and $4,400 for your first month of rent, and that's all you have to pay to get in. So we try and keep that moment of transition as financially stress-free as possible. Yeah. That's
Let's
all.
hear it for Michael.
Thank you.
Wood Glen's little brochure, there are a bunch in the front with our educational partners information, so feel free to grab one of these, and it has all the information on the different apartments and costs and such. So, but if you have any questions, Holly and Michael are here.
And if you haven't been to Wood Glen, I was telling Michael and Holly, I went there as a kid, and it's so different now. It's beautiful. The grounds are beautiful. It's got lots of green space. It's very clean, very warm and welcoming. So it's worth going to check it out just to see what they have available. It really changed, my mind from when I was a kid. to know. So it's worth going to check out.
Yeah, Nance and I loved it so much, we actually did a video, so, we'll be sending you an email thanking you for being here with a link, and we'll send that video in the link, as well as, the video to this, because I know it's a lot of information. So if you wanna go back, you can go to our YouTube channel, and it has a lot of our other seminars as well, so, thank you for being here, everyone. We do have a raffle. So the first one will be for the raffle basket with the wine and the goodies, and then we have a lot of flowers to give away.
Whose name am I gonna pick right now?